My name is Patricia Kathleen, and this podcast series will contain interviews I conduct with women, female identified, and non binary individuals regarding their professional stories and personal narrative as it relates to their perspective. This podcast is designed to hold a space for all individuals to learn from their counterparts, regardless of age, status, or industry. We intend to transparently investigate the evolving global dialogue regarding underrepresented figures in all industries across the USA and abroad. By hosting these stories and conversations, we aim to contribute to the changing platform and representation of these individuals for the future. Now let's start the conversation. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. I'm your host, Patricia, and today we are sitting down with Alyssa Atkins. Alyssa is the CEO of Lilia, an egg freezing concierge. You can find out more on www.hellolilia.com. That is hello, Lilia.com. Welcome, Alyssa.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Me too. I'm really excited. So for everyone listening, I'm going to read a quick bio on Alyssa. But before I do that, a roadmap of today's podcast, we will first look at unpacking Alyssa's academic and early professional life and background in order to proffer a platform in which she came to her current position. And then we'll turn our attention towards unpacking Lilia. We'll get into the who, what, when, where, why, how of the organization. And then we'll also unpack the ethos behind it. And then we'll look at the goals that Alyssa has for the next 1 to 3 years that has been changing for everyone and in the entire globe recently. And then we will also wrap up everything with advice that Alyssa may have for those of you looking to get involved, contact her regarding her expertise, perhaps emulate some of her career success. A quick bio on Alyssa. Alyssa is the founder and CEO of Lilia, an egg freezing concierge that helps women explore their fertility options. Lilia provides research and guidance, making it easy for women to decide whether to freeze their eggs or not, and then supports those who move forward. When Alyssa froze her eggs a few months ago, she threw the world's first ever egg securing celebration. Lilia wants more women like Alyssa to have the freedom of celebrating family planning according to their own timeline. Lilia has been featured in Forbes, The Globe, and Mail, Flair, and Flair magazine, and is backed by some of Canada and Silicon Valley's most renowned investors. So, Alyssa, I'm really excited to climb through. This podcast series has been going strong for 2 years with over 200 episodes. And you are the first founder of this particular industry that we've spoken to. And I cannot wait to unpack it. I find the issue and topic so crucial, and the services as well. But before we get to that, I'm hoping you can kind of unpack or describe briefly your academic background and early professional life that brought you to founding Lilia.
Absolutely. So I went to school in Windsor, which is the same city that I grew up in. It's just a small Canadian city outside of Detroit, just across the border. And I guess my foray into entrepreneurship was when in university, in my second year, I started a window cleaning company. And so you can imagine I was putting these 32-foot ladders on my dinky little car and driving an hour out to where the bigger houses were, and we'd clean windows all day. And, from 7 a.m. on. And at the end of the day, once we were finished, we would go knocking on doors, selling more window cleaning until we had filled the next day and week of jobs. And then I'd, drive home sunburnt and sweaty and call and follow up all of my leads from, the previous week you hadn't closed. So that's how I really got a taste of it and discovered this is for me. And so after my second year of university, I switched from criminology. I had wanted to be a lawyer into business. And from there, I moved to Toronto to participate in a program called the Next 36. So it's an entrepreneurship kind of boot camp or academic institution, I guess, where they teach you the fundamentals of starting a business by doing. And the emphasis there was on technology. And that's where I was kind of became aware of the impact you could have with software and tech. And so from there, most of those businesses don't work. Mine did not. Mm-hmm. And I spent some time in my early career at a couple startups, one called Top Hat, which is redesigning what the classroom could look like, and Care Guide, which was a marketplace for care services. And I was the sixth person to join, very first marketing hire, and so helped grow the company from very infant stages to a post-Series A company. And I'd say that's where I really cut my teeth in growth and hiring and developing people. But I had the fire in my belly to start my own thing again, and that's what brought me to Lilia.
So what was the impetus for launching Lilia? I mean, you have such a peppering of, industries, whether or not it was something you started from this kind of entrepreneurship boot camp or the companies you worked for, which I like this kind of tasting menu of different kinds of companies out there. But what was the impetus for, this is such a specific industry with Lilia. What was the impetus for it? Was it a long growing one, or was it just one day, one moment?
I say it's like I almost didn't choose Lilia. Lilia chose me. It pulled me in. It really didn't feel like a choice, because with Lilia, I'm really solving my own problem. And I can give you the background on that if you like now.
Absolutely.
But yeah, okay. So, the history here is kind of, it had been a few years, I guess, building up. But again, the stars kind of started to align and pull me in. But I had been in this 10-year-long relationship with my high school sweetheart that ended when I was 27. And I don't know what it is, by the way, but something happens at 27. I've spoken to hundreds of women now, doing this research for Lilia. Something happens at 27. We all start to revisit our lives. But that happened. And then my stepmom went through early menopause when she was 36. And I didn't even know that was a possibility. So these things kind of just put the idea of fertility on my radar. But the real tipping point for me was I was in a new relationship with someone younger than me, and we weren't aligned on our timeline to having kids. And so I started doing the dating math. And it's like, okay, if I need to have kids by the time I'm 35, then I need to be with the person for 3 years, and we need to be in love for a couple of years. I need to date for a year. So I need to break up with my boyfriend like yesterday, and go find somebody else.
Yeah.
And, he wasn't doing that math. And it didn't seem right that I had to plan my life around these reproductive timelines, but he didn't. And I had that was the impetus for me to start going and finding answers. And so I tried to find information about my options, and I spent hours on the internet, didn't find anything. There really was nothing out there. There was scattered literature. I had to call my doctor, have her refer me to a clinic, a fertility clinic, just to start understanding my body and what my options were. I was lucky to have a doctor who was supportive, but I've heard horror stories from my friends who have gone, and members of Lilia who have gone to their doctors who have told them, you know what, you're better off to just go find a husband and have a baby now. Like, don't worry about it.
What abuse, medical abuse. Remarkable.
Well, and unfortunately, most physicians don't have that mindset, but I realized women need easier access to their options and information about their bodies. And so I eventually, after going down this path, I saw egg freezing. I call it egg securing, because that's really how it feels. But I realized it made a lot of sense for me. I didn't want to have kids now. I'm 29. I was like, this makes a lot of sense. If I wanted to have kids later, if I wanted 2, 3, and 4 babies, I could use these for the last ones. It just really preserved my optionality. So after I secured my eggs at the end of last year, I felt this like freedom. It was this power and peace of mind. And I was like, is this how guys feel, just walking around, like, just do whatever they want,
Yeah, that's an incredible analogy. Absolutely. Or I mean, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The deduction is so true.
Right. And that's why I threw this big party to celebrate. It's like we celebrate women when they get engaged and married and pregnant. And here I was, having made the most, radical investment of self-love and self-care I ever had in my life. And I wanted to celebrate it with my friends. So all that to say, this is really the future that I see, is one where this is the new normal, where women, I think we can graduate university and secure our eggs as the symbolic moment of entering womanhood and celebrate with a party, and just have kind of all the options open to us. And at very least, one where women can easily explore all of their fertility options and make an informed decision.
Absolutely. And to have options open, I think it's incredibly important. There's still a stigma, and I'm not sure, I haven't done polling of great length, but everyone I speak to, and they're fairly, liberal, educated individuals, everyone is under this impression that egg freezing should happen around 40, and the discussion of early onset menopause, like you said you had with your stepmother, issues of disease that come up later on that cause, a high rate of sterility and things of that nature. There's so many possibilities out there that could come up. The idea that it's just for this much more matriculated female body who is out of options or time it's a weird stereotype that disservices women in the education of egg or egg freezing and things of that nature. And so I think it's really crucial to open and expand that dialogue.
Exactly. You can't see me, but I'm nodding aggressively because that's what I realized is we've kind of sold people egg freezing all wrong. It's not something that you should do, that you should only do in your late 30s if you haven't met somebody yet, as a last option. I hear women, I'll talk to them about it and they're like, oh, but what if I meet somebody? And I say, girl, you're gonna meet somebody. You're amazing. And when you do, you don't have to rush your timeline or have him sign this contract that you're gonna have kids in the next year. I think it's also more it's about more than my fertility. It's about my life and what options are available to me and what I can plan for, and just having a bit more control. And the thing about egg securing is what we know is it works better the sooner you do it. So in fact, waiting until your late 30s is not necessarily the best time to do it. It's actually much earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really important point. I think also it's important that society has forced this rhetoric, this the concept that, and I love half of it as a staunch third generation feminist. I am down with all of this, but we have women in the workforce. We have the actual requirement and need for, two breadwinner families even if, the nuclear American family, which doesn't even exist anymore. But this need for both parents to be working is absolutely commanded right now by our economic environment. And so you require these careers and things like that have shifted the requirements of our grandmothers, who may or may not have even wanted to, follow that guideline. But it becomes something that the dialogue should have been brought up naturally anyway, to sustain the, the economic requirement of two individuals working per household. It requires that parenthood and the timeline for that become wildly flexible. And not just take place in this 20-year-old body or whatever like that, which may not even be socio-emotionally recommended anymore anyway. I want to get into
what we're seeing, because I think like what we're seeing is it's the times have shifted and our systems haven't really kept up with it. Our systems are still designed to be very reactive. To your point, come in later when you have a problem. And I think that contributes to the stigma, is this is something you only do if there's a problem. And what I would say is like, this is something to consider really seriously proactively, so you don't run into any kind of issue later. And it's women working, it's women wanting to travel, it's women wanting to create, it's women wanting to not settle in their relationships and really hold out for the right person. All these things have changed, and knowing what your options are and what's true about your body arms women with information to make the best choices for themselves.
And there it is, the word choice. Like, it's just increasing more choice over one's future. If someone had to dictate when and which car you bought, I think everyone would be up in arms, and it's something so superficial as that. Seems it's like none of us sit very well, at least in this country, with that kind of a communistic, taking freedom away lifestyle. I want to get some of the fundamentals out of the way. I want to know when you launched, if you had founders, and did you take funding?
Oh, yeah. So Lilia, I got started in 2019. The focus on egg securing really emerged early 2020, as I started to realize that women needed, support as their journey evolved. So what I mean by that is like, Lilia was really meant to be this place where women could explore their options in this trustworthy, low commitment way. and their needs would change from information to action to support. And I realized there was this huge pent up demand for egg freezing that people just, women have wanted to do this for years. And what they tell me is, I just don't know what to do, where to go, how to start. And so as that became more and more of an issue on our calls, that's when we really started to focus on that this year.
Okay, that's where the concierge moment kind
exactly, yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
And then what about funding? Did you take any funding? Okay.
We have. Yeah, we've raised about $1.5 million.
Nice.
Yeah, it's funny, so I think our fundraising journey has been pretty atypical. The first little bit of money we took, we raised about $500,000 in a few weeks. We had no product, no site, no deck or anything yet. And then we just finished Y Combinator's recent batch, the Corona batch, I guess we're called. And so fundraising amid, the panic of the coronavirus was certainly unique. But
yeah, did you go to San Francisco or San Jose or wherever they still host those? For everyone listening,
that's right.
Y Combinator is this kind of accelerator started in Silicon Valley. It's one of the most famous ones. And it's a arduous application process. And there's the competitive nature of it. I can't remember last time I looked, they had like 10,000 applicants. They take a very small handful. And it's this boot camp, if you will, where you go through and kind of the matriculation process of from ideation usually until a much more graduated standpoint. And then like people at the final graduation pitches, there's been famously like Ashton Kutcher, and I'm not a huge fan, but I'm just saying Hollywood's elite and people of that nature, especially like the VC royalty all attend. And it's this great opportunity and business moment. So, and I've kind of diluted what your experience was, but I just wanted to offer that out there for everyone listening. And that's amazing that you went through that whole process. So this year, that is curious, really quickly, a tangent. How was the pitch fest during that?
Yeah, so you nailed it. Y Combinator is kind of the premier entrepreneurship group in the world. They take applications, they only accept 1%. And what the value I derived from Y Combinator was, I would say a couple things. One, it had us be much more ambitious. This wasn't any longer just about helping women get a fertility hormone test. This is about galvanizing a generation of women to know their options and secure their eggs so they could do whatever they wanted. Two, it had us talk to users nonstop. So I'm always on the phone with women, like asking them about their lives and what's hard and how we can solve their problems. And then in terms of the pitch, I would say I certainly was disappointed to have not been able to get up on stage, right? Like I have many, many weaknesses, but one of my strengths is the stage. And so I was really looking forward to that. On the flip side, because we did a lot of our fundraising remote, all of it remote actually, we were able to pack way more investor meetings into a day. And Lilia is very lucky. We're at a space where there's a ton of interest, right? So we had a lot of inbound interest, people who were really excited about it, and raised from some incredible investors I'm excited to work with.
Nice. That's awesome. So did you just wrap that this last couple of months?
Yeah, in the last couple of months. That's right.
Perfect. That's an exciting place to be at, actually. And I mean, obviously it's such a pertinent, your company is so vital, that it's represented in this early seed or whatever you're calling this 1.5 million Series A. And I'm not sure what round you're on or if you're seed round. So I think that all of that is super exciting. I'm curious with, I kind of want to unpack more about the services and what you do and the populations. We've gotten into, it's not just for, the 39-year-old, and no egg securing platform should be. And I also want to touch on that really quickly. I may be being crass. Like, do people no longer say egg freezing? Is it egg securing? Is that the better term for it? Or is that your term?
That is literally just a term I made up.
I like it. I think bring it out there. No, I really do.
Yeah, put it out there.
Very weird about, and they don't, I mean, the freezing process is not necessarily, it does get frozen, but it is securing the vitality of the egg.
Exactly. Yeah, like it's funny. My family actually prompted me. I was describing to them what I do over Christmas dinner. I'm still not sure they know. And they were like, "Why do you say egg freezing? Like, why are you so literal?" And I think they're right, and what it felt like was egg securing. I felt securing my future. One thing I want to be explicit about is, in no way is it 100% guarantee, but we know the sooner you do it and the more eggs you're able to retrieve, the higher your chances are of success. And that's why I think it's an important message to get out to women who are in their 20s and early 30s.
Yeah, I do
And
too.
so
With
yeah,
your
egg securing, let's go with it.
Yeah, well, let's put it out there over and over and over. I'll say it a million times. So with the egg securing process,
Yeah.
when you have a client, I kind of want to get into the functionality now of
Sure.
Lilia. So let's say I come to you tomorrow and I am a 29-year-old and I'm interested in doing it. What's the first step that Lilia is going to walk me through?
Yeah. So the first step would be most likely you would let us know kind of where you're at, right? Have you thought of this before? Or when are you thinking you might want kids? Kind of where are you at? And we'll start with a call. And what I find is a lot of women just kind of want to hear from someone who's gone through it before. And it's more of an emotional support at the very beginning than anything else. And so Lilia's intention is to be one place for women who don't want kids now to access everything they need along their fertility planning journey, starting with egg freezing. So we provide you research and guidance, and we make it easy for women to explore these options and decide whether freezing their eggs is for them or not. And then we support those who move forward. So our stance is, whatever decision you make is cool. We don't have a vested interest in you securing your eggs. What's important is that you have all of the information to make that decision, because we trust you're going to make the right call for yourself.
Right.
And
So the first step is education and given personal information. And then if someone does want to move forward, do you accompany them on the next step? Do you refer them?
Exactly. Yeah. So, once you kind of have an idea of how this works, you have some information, then instead of spending hours on the phone with clinics and insurance providers and figuring out where to go and kind of how this works, we book you in with a vetted clinic fast. With many of our clinic partners, we save you 10% on the cost. We've kind of negotiated
nice.
Cost savings for our members. And then we give you a custom price quote based on your insurance, and we're your trusted point person along the way. So, you end up with a clear expectation on what the costs are at a couple different clinics in your area. You save some money, which doctors might be good for you. We outline all of the science that, is available to date, both for and against, lay out the process, what to expect, and then book your appointment for you.
That's so genius.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one-stop shopping, because I think those areas, I equate it to adoption, which is ironic because it's in that same universe, but there's so many different agents, that have sub-agents and sub-agents, because there's so many different steps. And to not understand the price going in, or the different agencies, or it seems like a daunting task that you could kind of just go with whomever your Google search pulled up first. This concept of not being educated along the way and given different options. Is your database or the website, is this international at this point? You're in Canada. Is your company in Canada and the United States? Are you going to go global at that point? I mean, that's where it kind of reaches to me. Like, how are you getting people in Wisconsin as opposed to LA?
Yeah. So right now we're serving San Francisco and Toronto. We've had a couple customers in LA, but that's where we're focused right now. We have every intention of being a globally defining, women's health and lifestyle company.
Yeah.
And so, but you got to start somewhere, and we're really focused on doing a really thorough and incredible job, such that, if you think about securing your eggs, there's just nowhere better for you to go than Lilia, because one, we have relationships with the top clinics. Two, you're going to be joining a community of women who have kind of been where you're at. And three, we gather all of the data we can on each clinic, and then layer on top of that reviews from our members who go through. And so we really want to be the just no-brainer place for you to go if you start thinking of this path.
Yeah, that was my next question is, are you going to be taking like feedback from people who have gone through the system to find perhaps clinics that were better than others, or ones that were worse for certain reasons? Like, are you going to modify your recommendations and people that you work with based on those algorithms?
Oh, absolutely. And our commitment is to incredible care and options for our Lilia members. If we partner with a clinic who ends up not delivering just a superlative level of care, we'll have no intention of connecting women with that place again. I think it's time that in this space, consumers held more power and women had more power, because a lot of times we're kind of just left at at the hands of Google or Yelp or that one place we heard our coworker's sister went.
Yeah,
And
it's true. I mean, it's
yeah,
particularly in these areas, I think that leaving it to Yelp is absolutely terrifying, to see,
right.
especially given how much Yelp is wrong these days. I love those
Yeah.
cats that developed it, but I just don't think there's enough vetting within that own
Yeah.
system.
And the other thing I found was there wasn't really places for me as a woman who was in my 20s and didn't want kids now to
Yeah,
go. A lot of the reviews I was seeing on clinics were from women who are doing IVF. And someone who's trying to get pregnant right now is just not in the same emotional place as I
yeah.
am, who's not. It's another level of emotional support required. And so we just have different experiences.
Yeah, and that drops me into my next question, because when I read something like this, and I probably talk far too much to influencers and micro influencers on a daily basis, but my next question is do you have a platform for community so that women who are choosing to do this, like this kind of social space where they can have a chat or a
Yeah.
dialogue online and share experiences or garner
Yes.
information from one another?
Absolutely, we do. So once you become a Lilia member, we have this exclusive Slack group of other Lilia members where people can lean on each other and ask questions, and well, sometimes end up talking about things outside of even egg securing and asking career advice or relationship advice. But I think that's an important part of it, because a lot of people just don't know someone who's done it, or who don't know that they know someone. When I
Yeah.
secured my eggs, I learned 3 of my friends had done so as well, and we just didn't talk about it. And so it's a big part of normalizing this, is
Yeah.
being able to take up space and share our experiences.
Absolutely. I agree. To that end, I want to know what you think in your opinion is the most misperceived concept around securing your eggs. What is the number one thing where, from intelligent to naive individuals are coming from, where it's just a complete, it's not even opposite, it's inaccurate or unknown.
Mm. I would say just the idea that it's not something you need to really think about until you're 35.
Hmm.
Um, that certainly is an option. Like, you certainly could do that. What we know, though, about the science, and I didn't know this until I started reading the medical journals, was that egg securing works the sooner you do it. And that's because it's a numbers game, right? So, you'll collect a certain amount of eggs. Some of those will survive being thawed, some of those will survive fertilization, some will survive implantation. And so you want a high number of high quality eggs, and your best chances for that are in your 20s and early 30s.
How soon can you start it? Is it 21? Is there a legal parameter? Is it just a biological? Is it based on self biology? So it depends on your age and your
Mm,
body?
Good question. I don't know whether there's a legal limit, but I do know that everybody's ovarian reserve, so how many eggs we have for our age, basically, diminishes at different rates. So my stepmom, who went into early menopause at 36, would have had a different ovarian reserve had she done this testing at 29 than I did. I learned I had something called PCO. Super common, 1 in 10 women has this. And what it means is I ovulate at an irregular cycle. Because I've been on birth control forever, this is TMI now. But I didn't know this. And so if I had gone to go and get pregnant, it would have been hard to time, and I just never would have known. It also means I
Yeah.
have really high ovarian reserves. So I have a lot of eggs, which made me a good candidate for egg securing.
Well, yeah, and it's not TMI. That's information we need. Women who are, I know so many women who have been on a form of birth control, including the pill, and more of a chemical interaction for over 20 years, that haven't had a dialogue with their
Mhm.
gynecologist over it. And I'm like, you need to have that conversation.
Yeah,
They're looking at more
totally.
relationships between those things and other like side effects, not even diseases and scary things, but just things that are kind of interacting with the way that you behave as you grow. You don't stay, your relationship with birth control as a woman does not stay the same. It
Mm.
changes, as do our bodies over time. Our bodies aren't the same from 20 to 50 until we hit menopause or whatever that age is.
That's right.
They
You just
continue
hit
to
on
go like
something really
this.
important, right? Like,
Mhm.
fertility is not static and it is not binary. It changes over our lives.
Yeah.
And I would point to the other common misconception that I didn't realize until I started looking into this, was securing your eggs does not diminish your ovarian reserve or decrease the number of eggs you have. So some people think, okay, if I secure my
That's
eggs,
what
will I
I
still be able to
had.
get pregnant? Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not true. And that's because, and full disclosure, I am not a fertility doctor. Like, I am not giving any kind of medical advice.
Right.
But the way I understand it is, each month a whole crew of eggs is released, I guess, in our body, and one is chosen to go and be fertilized, and the rest just die off inside of our bodies. And so with egg securing, you're basically going and saving those eggs that would have died anyway. And so you're actually not at a net loss should you secure them.
Yeah, and I kind of want to, while it seems maybe rudimentary, I do want to just cover really quickly that the difference between securing your eggs as opposed to creating like people who are going through in vitro fertilization,
Yeah.
the differences in those processes. Can you just kind of map out what you would tell
Yes.
someone who came to you not knowing the difference between IVF, which has been a really famous name for the past decade, and what egg securing is?
Yeah. So totally. So there's actually basically three options you should talk to people about. So one is securing your eggs. And actually all three processes start out the same, where you stimulate your body with hormones so that your ovaries will continue to grow these eggs that would have died anyway. And then they're retrieved. The whole process, by the way, is only about 10 to 14 days, which I didn't realize until I started. 10 to 14 days. Yeah. So you grow your little eggies. Once they're ready, you retrieve them. With egg securing, you'll secure those eggs. So say you retrieve 20 eggs, 15 are good to be secured and frozen, then your eggs are secured. Another option is embryo freezing. So that's when you retrieve the eggs, you fertilize them with sperm, they go through genetic testing, and then you freeze them. The final procedure is IVF, right? So that's when you retrieve the eggs, you create embryos, so you fertilize them with sperm, you genetically test them, and then you implant them right away, so into the uterus. So that's for someone who's trying to get pregnant right now. So the main difference is with egg securing, I'm not looking to have an egg or an embryo implanted to have a baby now, whereas when you typically hear people going through IVF, they usually are.
Yeah.
Does that distinction make sense?
Absolutely. Have you ever run into clients? I'm interested in people that would have egg securing and then embryo securing done separately. I think that there's different ways of when you really talk about planning and things like that, it's an interesting aspect.
Yeah. So the one thing I would say to people, I considered embryo freezing actually, and decided on egg freezing, because with embryo freezing, the good part is you fertilize the egg, so it's a bit sturdier. It goes through genetic testing, and so you kind of have a better idea of what's going to come out on the other side. That said, with embryos, you are tied to that person you secured your embryo with, right? So if I freeze it with my partner now, and something happens and we're not together in a few years, I can't use those without his permission.
Right.
And I don't think he's going to give me his permission in that case. Whereas with securing eggs, you have less visibility into how many are going to turn into a live baby on the other end, but they're yours no matter what.
Right.
And something I tell people who are in a relationship too, people think some egg securing is just for single women. People who are in relationships can absolutely benefit from this as well, right? My partner was super supportive of me securing my eggs. They're mine to use or they're ours to use later on. And so those are kinds of the things to weigh.
Absolutely. So I'm wondering, what kind of a model is Lilia based on with a financial structure? Is there a subscription? Is it, per phase, per the education advisement phase, then the next phase? How does it all break down for your customer?
Yeah. So right now it's an annual membership of $500. And to be totally honest, by the time this airs, or maybe the next time we chat, I wonder if we'll have a different model, just because I'm experimenting with them right now. What I'm learning is, people are telling us that they think $500 isn't enough and we should charge more, which is a hilarious thing to hear from your customers. But I think there are probably a bunch of different models that could work. I'm excited to explore them. But today you join Lilia for $500. We take you through to doing your consultation where you'll learn more about your body and chat with a fertility doctor, and you join the community, and we're your support along the way.
Nice. And have you found, I don't know if you've Googled the amount that the internet would proffer up as to what someone
Mm,
would spend, but all of the women I talk to, particularly younger women that have this conversation with themselves, few and far between as they are, talk about it being like their idea of floating in their head is that it's tens of thousands of dollars
mm,
in order to get to the egg securing position. Can you
yeah.
kind of, first of all, can you advise as to whether or not the quick Google search has the numbers that you have or that you have a general range from? And can you drop some numbers for us?
Absolutely. So egg securing, you're looking at about $10,000, give or take a couple thousand. And I
Hmm.
think people often think it's much more because they hear of people doing IVF who are having to do many, many cycles to try and get
Right.
pregnancy. When you're securing your eggs, usually you're doing one cycle, maybe two to get the number of eggs you want. Um, and so that's about around 10,000. Some clinics will have financing options. I used some of my personal line of credit that I just happened to have to just help myself spread out payments a bit. There are actually a lot of ways to kind of make it happen. Um, and the way I thought about it was, okay, what have I spent $10,000 on in my life? Probably some pretty silly things.
Yeah.
And, especially right now while we're all kind of in quarantine, there are a lot of trips and vacations that have been canceled.
Yeah.
And I think what I've been hearing from women is, okay, I'm not going to Europe. Instead, I'm going to invest in myself this way.
Yeah. Are there financing options? Are you starting to connect your customers with loan opportunities and things of that nature, or do those even exist yet?
Yeah, that is something we do for our Lilia members. So we'll break down at the clinics that we're advising to them whether there are financing options and how we might connect them to that optionality.
Yeah, there's also
Yeah,
GoFundMe for those who are, even more up
totally.
the hill. And I think
Yeah.
that there should be a banking opportunity there. Banks, we need to get financial people more invested
Hmm.
in women's. This is about the proliferation of our species. This is
Yeah.
not about Susan getting pregnant. This is about like continuing on with humanity. And I think our financial system should care about that. You heard it.
Yeah, and I mean, we do, Susan, we want you to get pregnant. And I think
Yeah,
we should have employers offer this as a benefit and
absolutely.
government subsidized. This is something that's really important to women having the same reproductive optionality as men. It really is the best reproductive equalizer we have right now.
Yeah, family planning. Absolutely.
Hmm.
And then
And
we'll,
life planning, right? Like it affects so much
yes.
of what I'm able to do, whether I'm able to, right, travel or start my company or kind of relationship I'm able to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the government needs to start subsidizing like it does with milk and cheese that way.
I would love to see
We'd have the healthiest families in the world.
that.
Yeah, so now I want to turn towards, everyone's shifted a little bit with this. You're in an interesting infancy heading into toddler phase. Well, how I view, founders and new company
Yeah,
startups, an exciting phase. You're in one of my
totally it
favorites.
is. Oh,
But
me too.
when you're looking at goals for your next step, what are your goals in the next 1 to 3 years?
Mm. Yeah. So, like I said, I see Lilia becoming the defining women's health company of our generation. We're currently in Toronto and San Francisco. Like I mentioned, certainly by the end of that time, we would like us to be expanded across North America and helping women do more than just navigate the beginning of the process. Like Lilia's bread and butter is really, let's get you the information, let's help you take a next step to give you some emotional support. Once women start securing their eggs, though, that's a whole process that they can really have really use some help with. So those are kind of like the tactical things. Um, when I think about our greater goal, though, if that's interesting to you,
Yeah, absolutely.
um, I think it's success to me would look like women having the same options as men in this way.
Hmm.
Like I said, I think egg securing is the best reproductive equalizer we have right now, and certainly we want to see other things like better paternity and maternity leave. Like these things are important as well. But I think in the same way that birth control liberated women sexually, egg freezing can be the catalyst to reproductive liberation. And I think eventually we will see it become as common as birth control. And so I hope to see this world where parents are gifting their daughters egg securing upon graduation, and we're seeing these parties come up, and women are going into their careers and their lives feeling unobstructed.
Absolutely. And it's funny because even as we have the dialogue about the necessity and the population it serves and everything else, I hadn't done the, the domino effect, but it is
Right.
absolutely as powerful as birth control because it's dealing with giving choice back,
Mhm.
and opportunity back where it may not be needed but might be needed, and service someone's life in the same way that a college fund would. And so when you talk about high school graduation, I have two daughters, and as we started off, I thought I really want to gift them this. I think it's like incredibly important to be able to provide my children with options later on. I try not to pick what they're actually going to do, but just make sure, as every loving parent across this
Right.
globe does, that opportunity is provided when I can provide it. And
Exactly. And
so,
I should clarify, college is probably a better
yeah,
graduation
all right.
gift. But and if I may, you get me excited saying this because I feel a little bit quixotic when I imagine the domino effect. But I can't help myself think of the magic this could do. What if women could do whatever they wanted in their 20s and 30s and weren't bound to our reproductive timelines? Like, what if this could help close the wage gap as women could continue working into their childhood?
Right.
What
Those are
if
the
it could have helped,
socioeconomic like
right?
ripples. Yes, that
Yeah,
I just kind of flutter with thinking about pay parity, like things
pay
as you're
parity. Like, what if
speaking
we could have
about like
more
that
women starting
change.
companies, and
Mhm.
then we would have more successful female entrepreneurs, and
Yeah.
as a result, more VCs, and that would lead more female entrepreneurs to being funded. And
Yeah.
what all these what ifs start rattling off in my mind. And so I think Lilia really could catalyze this next great equalizer.
I do too. And I mean, and eventually, on funding round G, like getting a fund going for under socioeconomic, duress individuals so that
Mm.
it's an egalitarian, it's an equal
Hmm.
opportunity moment for those who want it, getting into subsidization and things like that. It absolutely would have the most loud ripple effect I can
Hmm.
imagine. And so
Love
it's
that.
exciting to think about. I'm wondering, because you've had such a, like, I really feel like this is like one of the top 0.01% of success stories with a foundership. And I think that those always come from people who come up with their idea very much so based on a personal legacy like you
Mm.
did. And when those two things match up with like a current societal need, it's gold,
Mm.
that and like hitting YC. I think those are the two places where like you're going to go. But I'm wondering, that included and aside, if someone came up to you who was like, listen, I have this idea, it deals with women's issues, and I'm going to found this company. And it was another woman or female identified or non-binary individual, anyone other than like the white cisgendered male.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this individual walked up to you and said, I've got this idea. It's something that came from something that affected me. And I'm just getting started. What are the top three pieces of advice you would give that individual knowing what you know now?
Hmm. Well, I think you nailed it when you said, great businesses are started from people solving their own problems. And so that would probably be the first piece of advice is look around in your life. What annoys you every day or every week? Um, what's a problem that you have? And if you just start there, you're so far ahead a whole bunch of people who are trying to solve a problem they don't understand for a user they don't really get.
Mm-hmm.
And in that same vein, I would say something Lilia has really benefited from is talking to our users nonstop, right? Even though I am our user and our target demo, I am not so naive to think I know everything about what we should build and exactly how it should be. I obsess about solving people's, like, other women's problems
Yeah.
because, and I think it's led to us deeply understanding our users and the problem we're solving and being able to speak to them in a much more impactful way. So that's kind of one, solve your own problem and talk to people about their problems, and also really listen to what they're saying. There was a while where women were telling me what their problem was and I just wasn't listening. I was like, no, your problem's this.
Right.
So really listen to what they say. Another thing I have found helpful for me, and I think this is particularly important for women and people who identify as such, is, I guess, acknowledging, respecting, and silencing your inner saboteur.
Hmm.
And I do that by creating a more powerful alter ego. So, my inner saboteur tells me things like, who do I think I am starting this company? Like, I don't know anything. This is not going to work. Here are all the reasons your ideas are absolute shit. Like, you can't do this. We've all got it, just running off, and when that beats me up and puts me into bed. And what I learned is your inner saboteur, it comes from the part of your brain called your amygdala, which is like our reptilian brain. And it's just trying to protect you. It sees danger, it sees risk, and it wants to keep you alive. And so it tries to prevent you from doing anything uncomfortable. And so what I say is, thank you, I see you, you're trying to protect me, but fear doesn't run the show. And so I created this kind of alter ego. Her name is Alyssa. So it's like Alyssa and Khaleesi.
Mm-hmm.
And she is the woman I want to be. She is fierce and powerful, and nobody stops her. She does whatever the fuck she wants.
Yeah.
She gets shit done. And so when my inner saboteur is coming at me, I channel Alyssa. I was like, what would she do? And I try to be her.
Yeah. That's brilliant. I love it. The inner saboteur I haven't heard before, and I'm absolutely going to drop that in the next couple of weeks.
Do it. I got it from RuPaul. Yeah. So
did you?
I'm so obsessed with RuPaul.
I am too.
And she talks about your inner saboteur, and you see it, and just naming it has helped a lot. I see you. I know what you're trying to do. I love you. Thank you. You don't run the show.
Well, and that's the thing. I think a lot of women talk about, I hear a lot, is particularly in the entrepreneurial circuit, at conventions and places that I'm speaking, people talk about the imposter syndrome. And I have been privileged and enough to never have experienced that. And so I don't identify, it alienates me. I feel like I can't relate or speak to women who are speaking about it. I respect it, and I want to practice empathy, but I don't have this camaraderie. And inner saboteur covers more than that. And that actually covers me. Like inner saboteur is like, it's not just imposter syndrome. It's anything that kind of is hindering you. It's those thoughts that are like preventing you in a safe mechanism, which thank God our bodies and lives are set up to do, or we'd be dead as a species. The idea that you don't go running into fire, like these ideas.
Exactly.
And so,
that's right. It's
I like
the same
the
voice that tells you like, you can't run through fire, that tells you you can't start this business. It's the same person.
We have a higher level of brain, so we've been able to differentiate. But I do love the idea of acknowledging it and thinking it as well. This concept of, we frequently talk in entrepreneurship circles about like, you just got to beat that down, like say no, bite it, push it aside, do it away. But it doesn't really help. What we've learned about the human psychological brain is like, you actually have to work through those things. And so acknowledging it and doing that and then relabeling it as inner saboteur is inclusive. Like I feel so many of your little terms, and I love that.
Please take them.
So do you have a third, or did you start with your first as great business starts with?
My third piece of advice, I think it would be to, and I hesitate because this feels like trite advice, but I know that I have benefited every time I have pushed myself and done something that scared me. If I think of all of the inflection points of my career that catapulted me to the next level, it was every time I thought, what the fuck am I doing? Right. Like I remember my last day at my last startup before Lilia, I remember sitting there being like, what the hell am I doing? Like I'm leaving this super cushy job. I make a ton of money. Like I'm killing it. And I'm going to go and make zero salary. I didn't have fundraising at that point to go and chase this problem I thought needed solving. And those are the moments. Every time I felt that, the other side was something incredible.
Absolutely.
And so that said, I did things beforehand to set myself up. I changed my lifestyle knowing I wanted to start a company again. So I stopped, buying champagne every weekend and like going out to dinner. I started trying to challenge myself to live like a founder. And that gave me the financial, security to be able to float myself for a few months. So prepare for the risks, but really take them. Actually, a bonus fourth, I would say. I have benefited from reading voraciously. A couple years ago, I set out to read 52 books in a year, and I did. And it like that and starting a company are the ways I've learned the most and the fastest. It's such a good deal if you can learn somebody else's story for, $20. it really has expanded the way I think about, not just life problems, but the company's opportunities.
Yep, I completely agree. And I think that is an effort to what a lot of our audience members are gleaning from these. People think that it's just sharing stories, but I think people are garnering so much information about pitfalls and successes. And that's why I always end with these advice pieces, because it's astonishing what advice we actually have, and it kind of requires someone to ask us. And we tend to want to look for advice somewhere else. And frequently we have advice that we ourselves need to revisit.
Oh, and isn't that always the advice you need?
Yeah.
The advice you would give to someone else is exactly the advice you need to give yourself.
Yeah, it's therapy, right? It's normal person's therapy that you frequently receive when you go to speak with anybody who's helping you in the social psychology field. Is just what was within you, just removing those blockages. So, absolutely. Okay, so I have number 1, talk to your users nonstop and listen. Number 2, acknowledge your inner saboteur. Thank it, and then create an alter ego to combat and respond. And number 3, push through and into the fear that you have with all of the knowledge that you have. And number 4, read voraciously. I love
well
that.
said.
That is well said. They're great. By you. I know.
Yeah, but you put them so very well, very succinctly, very clear. Thank you for that.
I love it so much. Well, we're out of time today, Alyssa, but I just want to say I love your company. I want to see it become what your goal is, the next really premier women's health and focus company in the world. And so I hope and I support you in that endeavor. And I want to say thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you. This is absolutely wonderful. I feel like you and I could just sit here and chat for hours.
Absolutely. We could. It would be my pleasure as well. For everyone listening, we have been speaking to Alyssa Atkins. She is the founder and CEO of Lilia, which is an egg freezing concierge. You can find out more on www.hellolilia.com. And until we speak again next time, stay in, stay well, stay safe. And remember to always bet on yourself. Sancho.